Welcome to the final round of the Public Forum TOC, everybody.
So it's such an honor to be here in TOC Finals. There are many people I want to thank. First, we want to thank the TOC committee and the University of Kentucky, especially Dr. G.W. Patterson and Mr. Dave Arnett. You bring the community together for this tournament every year, and it is absolutely special every time. Next, we want to thank the Blake School, Ann Stavney, Ann Graybeal, Joe Ruggiero, and Dr. Raleigh. We are so lucky to have a school that supports our program's existence. And then I also want to thank my parents and siblings, mom and dad. Thank you guys so much for all the constant support and love. I'm truly so lucky to have you all. And Ale, thank you for getting me into this activity in the first place, and thank you for being the best brother ever. An enormous thank you to the Blake team as well, current debaters and alums. Your constant support throughout the year has kept us motivated, and we are more than a team, we're a family. Thank you to CK and Nora as well, who, after they finished competing this weekend, immediately pitched in to help us make it here. They're the best. I love you guys so much. And thank you to our coaches, Shane, Sandy, Ava, CJ, Josh, and all of our other amazing coaches. I really just could not have done any of it without you all. You guys are some of the kindest, most passionate, amazing people I've ever met, and I'm so happy I got to meet you and I get to call you guys my family. And lastly, of course, thank you to Elizabeth. You are legitimately the best partner ever. You are the most hardworking and smartest person I've ever met, and you're also the funniest. And we've made some amazing memories, and I'm so glad that we got to have this season together. You truly are the best. Okay, so in that case, hopefully the email is sent.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, great. I'll send case right now. We are from Connecticut's right-wing terror. Domestic terrorism is currently skyrocketing. Dow Jones finds over the last 7 years, domestic terrorism-related investigations have grown by 357%. Anti-government was the second largest category of incidents. It's because biometric surveillance can fuel distrust in institutions, but Tail let 10 fine. Privacy breaches, however, will continue to erode trust in the institutions that require their abuse. Potential for abuse of personal information can be sufficient to make certain segments of society reluctant to engage. This is true empirical literature 20 fines. These robust surveillance systems reach deep into private lives, affect individuals' social behavior, creating a widespread atmosphere of suspicion and distrust towards fellow citizens and state institutions, and thereby transform civil society. A 1 standard deviation increase in surveillance intensity decreases trust by 0.1 standard deviation. And distrust causes violence. McGavin and Baker 21 fine. Distrust in institutions and public polarization are dangerous that can create fertile ground for authoritarian leaders to manipulate the public and stoke political balance, because the more people lack confidence in trust in institutions, the more they're willing to buck norms. There's two impacts versus grids. Domestic terrorists increasingly target their grids, Bergen 2020 fines. Attacks and suspicious activity in the U.S. power stations reach a decade-long high, incredible specific plans by violent domestic terror groups to attack the grid. The U.S. power grid is inherently vulnerable because if one part of it can be destroyed, it can be a very significant impact on the other large parts of it very quickly. The U.S. can suffer a blackout for weeks or months. White 19 continues that consequences are likely to be catastrophic collapse of the water infrastructure for and food production is through technology that 2% of the population could be the other 98% we would starve. Starker 19 finds a successful attack on the major portion of the U.S. electric grid would have widespread disruptive and deadly effects. A large number of deaths is likely. A societal breakdown could occur as little as 1 week. Second impact, nuclear war. Right-wing terror goes nuclear. Starker 21. U.S. far-right extremists could have a history of attempted procurement of nuclear weapons and using against the federal government and white power activists, many of whom are veterans who are hardened by military training and are organized for violent resistance, and we must act preemptively. This could cause extinction hell in 08. A terrorist attack involving a nuclear weapon like also significant civilization can be destroyed. Nuclear into a might erase one base from the earth. Attention to is deepfakes. Deepfakes in the U.S. military land biometric national history finds the technology is biometric in nature. Officers want to have the ability to create and deploy deepfakes against those outside the country. This could have a range of bad impacts. National theory continues. The showstoppers and units, deepfake ambitions, military deepfakes fail in a category of weapon that cannot be reliably controlled once the unleashed. There's no end to the scourges that could result. The deepfake detection is not enough. I'm 23. Given this sheer volume, synthetic material that could be churned out, even a 99% accurate detector would miss a non-total amount of volume of disinformation. Moreover, governments will have highly skilled programmers think the most ingenious detectors will have their limits because breakthroughs in detection will almost certainly be used for the destruction of deepfake algorithms. The impact is exacerbating conflict. Deepfakes increase military intervention. Mission 21. A deepfake technology matures the election to be salient in military information operations, also create compulsion to counterattack by some lies and fabrication. Country might feel compelled to resort to a crisis escalation and challenge attribution verification. So eventually, to nuclear miscalculation. Mission 21. Deepfakes erode trust among states and ensure complicate nuclear weapon decision making. Such errors may cause a breakdown in automated entity architecture, bearing serious consequences of the corruption of poison data with adversaries think undoing advantage and engage in nuclear brinkmanship. This causes extinction of Arkansas 25. The extinction of nuclear strikes after the increment human civilization will be destroyed. Caesar's Afghanistan. This is ramping up drone strikes in Afghanistan 2022. The president of Gizio cases were here is killing to double down on the over-the-horizon counter-terror strategy regarding Afghanistan and technology enabled the execution of these operations. VRT is integral. Who 17. U.S. military forces have collected biometric data involving more than 1.1 million persons in Afghanistan from the target populations. And Bullis 15 continues. 70% of key individual targets captured in the battlefields identified with the help of biometric technologies. Bidding DRT and strikes attacks are only authorized if a specific target cannot be identified. Savage 22 fines. Rules will limit operations in Afghanistan. Policy requires mere certainty that a target is a member of a terrorist group approved for so-called direct action. The impact is they collapse. Drone strikes in Afghanistan will block cooperation and make the Taliban more extreme. ICG 22. Upping the tempo of drone strikes is likely to block possible minimal cooperation with the Taliban further into the arms jihadists and encouraging defections to ISKP. Hakimi 22 continues. The Taliban are largely loosely into different factions, and so here's that put significant pressure on these internal divisions, especially if the U.S. Could use drone strikes in Afghanistan. This will trigger civil war. Latham 21 fines. The prospect of divisions leading to dissolution raises the prospect of civil war. Disparate parts of the Taliban coalition will turn on each other, vying for their share of the explosive victory, and even to the point of armed conflict. Disasters that are likely to spill over Afghanistan's borders. Thus we affirm.
Okay. I also have some thank yous. First, we'd like to thank the University of Kentucky for hosting the J.W. Patterson Tournament of Champions. And next, we'd like to thank all the Durham Academy administration who support our speech and debate team so much. And our coaching staff, Crawford, Anna, Elliot, Emma, Jacob, Jordan. Without you, we'd not be on the stage today. And most importantly, I don't know why I did that. Our teammates for being there for us and helping us through the season. And also our families for supporting us and letting us do this activity and, not go to school and stuff. And I'd like to thank my partner, Michael, for being such a good debate partner, for always being there for me. I'm Alex Hong. I'll be the first speaker for Durham HH on the con. And unless anyone's not ready, my time's going to start whenever. We negate contention what is pandemics. Sub-point A is tracing. U.S. is moving towards biometrics or a pandemic response. U21 finds countries including China, Russia, India, Poland, and Japan have used facial recognition technology for tracing. The United States is also moving in this direction. Washington passed a bill and proposed California bill. Follow these two bills could shape the way that people are traced. Empirics prove biometrics can streamline contact tracing and surveillance. Leach 22 writes proximity tracing tools with facial recognition can record movements of individuals and contact people who've been exposed. Several countries have utilized facial recognition for contact tracing. This level of surveillance requires a biometric database. Moreover, Mongovan 21 finds biometrics already being incorporated into touchless solutions that can effectively reduce or eliminate shared touchpoints. Biometric authentication processes take only seconds to complete, increasing pass-through and helping to maintain social distancing. Mitigation solves for pandemics. Gates 22 explains, if we'd stopped the COVID pandemic before 100 days had passed, we could have saved over 98% of lives. Subway B's algorithms. The U.S. needs better technology to fix medical records and streamline patient identification. Pod Servinsky 23 explains a patient matching problem is being exacerbated by the rapid growth and volume of patient data. Without an improved patient matching strategy, misidentification will only worsen, endangering lives. Fortunately, biometrics solvent are key for AI healthcare. Bill 18 finds biometric recognition is a promising way of identifying individuals in countries with inconsistent record keeping, including migrants. Unlike usual identification methods, biometrics allow for rapid identification of a person independent of the patient and can be consistent. Thus, Bell concludes that accurate patient ID is fundamental to the underlying operating of successful algorithms. That's crucial for stopping the next pandemic, as Galetsy 22 finds that such algorithms make it possible to study the effects of the crisis, facilitate pandemic strategies, and discover vaccines and treatments. AI with its ML algorithms make it simpler by automating and enhancing data preparation. Overall, the next pandemic is coming sooner than we think. Specifically, a U.S. pandemic is likely to emerge from Texas. What does 18 finds that Texas is a mix of rapid growth, urbanization, poverty, and trade, which expose Texas to diseases. Texas is disproportionately at risk to global warming, which is conducive to insect transmission. These factors have combined to create a new Texas that is suited for the rise of emerging and neglected diseases. Thus, Davis 20 concludes, scientists estimate that we'll face a pandemic at least once every 5 years. That's catastrophic, as Millet 17 finds historically disease events have been responsible for the greatest death toll in humanity, and because of rapid spread through globalization, Millet concludes that a future pandemic could result in outright human extinction. Contention 2 is terror. The U.S. is implementing biometrics into drone strikes. Brodsky 2 months ago writes, the U.S. Air Force now has the capability to use facial recognition on drones. Biometrics are critical to precision drone strikes. Wandenberg 20 confirms employing biometrics for the purpose of kinetic targeting, include voice recognition, have been used in drone strikes. Thus, efficiency has never been higher. Jeffrey 23 writes that drones can prove helpful in rescue missions, perimeter protection, domestic search operations. The technology reduces risk with 98.85% accuracy. Thompson 23 finds facial recognition technology provides benefits in that fewer innocent people are killed. Effective drone strikes decrease terrorism. Johnson 16 finds that drone strikes are associated with reductions in terrorist attacks. Loss of leaders is associated with the degradation of terrorist organizations and their ability to organize and produce violent attacks. That's why Furman 22 quantifies drones lead to a 35% reduction in attacks and a 75% decrease in fatalities per year. Overall, as terrorism grows, the threat of an existential attack rises. Williams 22 writes, bioterrorism agents are a common choice for terrorists because they're easy and inexpensive to produce, easy to disseminate, and can cause widespread effects. As an extinction level event, as technology advances, Cooper 13 finds if individuals were successful in releasing highly virulent and deadly genetic malware, extinction would be inevitable. Contention 3 is House of Cards. Biden is moving to the center to ensure re-election, and immigration is the key. Samuels last week explains that Biden's pivot to the center represents an attempt to shore up electoral weak spots as he prepares for his imminent re-election campaign. Immigration is tightly intertwined with Biden's support among moderate Democrats, with Baker 22 concluding that Biden has more support than Trump in the Republican Party. Perception is the key to that support. Arthur 22 writes, Biden's handling of immigration weighs particularly heavily on the minds of Americans, which Porter 23 concludes represents Biden's most significant vulnerability. Thus, biometric technology has been critical to shoring up Biden's support. Shaw 22 finds that collecting biometrics at the border mark a tougher stance on immigration. If Biden does not maintain this tougher stance, Caldego 22 finds that it would leave an unsettled and untested field of contenders to fend off Trump's return. Indeed, if Biden loses, Trump will return. Rakich 3 days ago finds the national Republican polling average shows Trump receiving 49% of the vote and DeSantis receiving 26%, predictive of the eventual nominee. This guarantees devastation, as Star 19 finds that climate change demands immediate action, and Trump has plans to cancel existing climate reforms and pull the U.S. out of agreements while encouraging other countries to do nothing, guaranteeing runaway global change. If this occurs, Spectre 19 warns that by 2050 the planet will plunge into a feedback loop of ever hotter lethal heat conditions beyond human survivability.
Okay. Good for
Yeah. Let me see.
Okay. So your evidence that the next pandemic would start in Texas was in 2018. Clearly the next pandemic did not start in Texas. At that point, why do we care about this evidence?
Okay, it's not like the person who wrote this piece of evidence is not a prophet, right? It's not like they said that it was going to happen in 5 years, and 5 years later everyone should have died, right?
I'm not talking about 5 years. I'm talking about where it happened. Essentially, what I'm trying to get at is, look, people can speculate about where pandemics are going to start. Undeniably, climate change is having a very severe impact on the ability for pathogens to come out and kill us all. But however, your evidence does not isolate Texas as uniquely the only place it's going to start, which is why when your author wrote this evidence in 2018, we saw in 2019 China was where the pandemic started.
There's a few problems with that. The first is that our evidence that talks about Texas is different from the piece of evidence that says it'll happen every 5 years.
I know,
and it does
evidence
isolate
is from 2018.
Yeah, and it does isolate Texas as the most likely place.
And
then
where
the
did it happen after?
Hold
China.
on. The Davies evidence, which is from 2020, is the one that says every 5 years. But more importantly, it's like Davies is obviously not a prophet, and just because 5 years have passed doesn't mean that everyone should have died by then. It's an analysis of the conditions that globalization have caused that are ripe for disease transmission.
You're misunderstanding my question. I'm not talking about Davies. I think it's very true that pandemics, are probably a threat. And I also think that nothing in your evidence isolates the U.S. as the place where the pandemics are going to start. But
wait, those are two separate pieces of evidence. But okay, let's talk about your first argument about right-wing terror.
Sure.
So you read me evidence that kind of surveillance decreases distrust, and then you read me a different piece of evidence that says that authoritarian leaders can rile people up over distrust. So where's your internal link into right-wing terrorism?
I'm not talking about necessarily authoritarian leaders riling up people over distrust. I'm talking about that when it's very simple. When people are getting mass surveilled by the government, especially if they're already having affiliations with alt-right terrorist organizations, this only fuels them more to either become more violent or even turn to those groups in the first place because they have a reason to distrust the government, not want to feel engaged in civil society, and then create these mass attacks.
Your evidence is pretty specific though. You read me one card that says that increase in surveillance decreases trust, and then you read me a card that says distrust causes violence. That just says distrust in institutions create fertile ground for leaders to stoke violence. How do you get to the domestic terrorists are going to nuke everyone?
Okay, so you just read me my link for me, but I'll explain it again because it's very simple and it's also really good. Essentially, when people are getting mass surveilled, they do not trust the government, they do not trust civil institutions, they do not trust, for example, their neighbors. At that point, they, A, if they're already in kind of these alt-right terrorist groups, get more violent, or B, if they haven't turned to them yet, they start turning to them. What happens then? When you have all this massive violence and hatred and distrust, they create their own little organizations that want to create, A, attacks on the grid, which have been literally increasing massively the status quo because they consider uniqueness, and or B, have the capability to do a nuclear attack. It's because a lot of them are ex-veterans, are veterans and have military training, which allows them to know how nuclear fission works and what kind of uranium they need, or access the literal bombs themselves. The argument is very, very good and very, very simple, but that looks like it's time on my clock.
I'll just do my thank yous while we're waiting on the document to send. So I'd like to echo what Sophia said and give thanks to the TOC and TOC staff for making this tournament happen and run smoothly, as well as to the Blake School for this wonderful opportunity and support and letting us go out here and debate. I'd also like to thank the coaches of Blake Debate, Ava, Josh, Christian, Shane, Sandy, Kate. We really appreciate everything you do, constantly encouraging us to do better, teaching us how to do better, and reminding us of why we actually debate in the first place. Next, I would like to thank my parents. They've constantly believed in me even when I've had terrible rounds as a novice and encouraged me to stick with the activity and always supported me when I wanted to go to tournaments. That was invaluable. Also, like Sophia said, thank you to the Blake team, Ava, Zelly, Ruby, Kaylee, and everyone else back in Minnesota. Y'all are great. The future is incredibly bright for Blake Debate. And also, thank you so much to our friends in space, Sabrina, William, Ruth. It's so nice to see you. And also Ryan and Archon. I'll always cherish our memories of doing UmpTF homework together. Glad you can make it through the TOC. And last of all, and definitely not least, thank you, Sophia. Everyone dreams of getting to the TOC, and there were definitely times this season where it was extremely rough, we're here. You are literally the best partner I could ask for. You are an incredible debater, from your speed to your incredible summaries that you continuously give all throughout this tournament. Even though your favorite artist is Morgan Wallen and mine is Lana Del Rey, I still couldn't imagine anyone else I would rather debate with. Outside of round, you are an incredible person. I will always look up to you for your confidence and intelligence, laughing and gossiping into our hotel room until 1 a.m. May have made us tired when we had to wake up at 6 a.m. for rounds, but it was very entertaining, and I'm so grateful to be with your friend and debate with you throughout the season. Okay, I hope everyone's gotten the doc. Okay, great. It's just gonna be down their case. Anyone not ready?
Not ready.
Okay, numbers.
Okay,
Okay, good to go? Okay, great. On pandemics, on subpoint A, one turn against of distrust, Schwab 20, the need surveillance to sponsor an adversarial dynamic between the public and health authorities, undermining public support for and compliance with social distancing mandates. The implication is, even if there's facial recognition technology, people won't comply with the contact tracing mandates the government gives them, but this outweighs on reversibility to prevent one pandemic, but all future responses will be ineffective because of government distrust, COVID proof, second turn against incarceration. BRT amplifies racism, Moy 2019. The system identifying individuals who have already been arrested for something else, black people are arrested at a higher rate, this means the identification rate would be higher for black people, cut the card there, Johnson all 22. Using FRT at a 55% higher black arrest rate. This links to the argument mass incarceration fuels pandemic spread. Hoax 20. For the entire U.S. mass incarceration was linked to roughly 13% of all new cases. Third trend against the deportation. Ferguson 19. Undocumented individuals, government surveillance become chilled from obtaining basic medical services. Facial recognition technology will eviscerate any ability to obtain information without being identified. This fuels disease spread. Gonzalez 22. Feeling threatened by anti-immigration policies led to a significant decrease in visits for diseases and family planning among undocumented adults and had fatal outcomes. Fourth, delinking because of overload. Bizos 20. COVID-19 has laid bare the limitation of modern technology. We can predict where it's headed. Too many uses data are collected. Nonsense correlation increases the order of the square number of variables, which is almost impossible to identify. For this, on probability, our evidence analyzes countries that use the big data approach and finds that fails their evidence. About 98% is for Bill Gates. It's basically an analytic. Go to step 1B. One, there are numerous alternatives to biometrics for patient identification. Rippling et al. 20. Many healthcare systems that adopted initiatives to implement UPIs, matching algorithms, referential match rate, reported match rate as high as 98 and 100%, but second, patient misidentification is a small problem. Avalon 23. 8% of medical errors are attributed to patient misidentification. Go to terror. 1. Terror is increasing. CW for March. Attacks will become more deadly with lethality rising by 26%. Terrorism deaths worse scores than the rest of the world. Second turn against some data breaches. Data collected in conflict zones is unsecured applicant 22. Keeping the threshold for access below level of classification mandatory encryption meant that soldiers in the field could input data instantly, which meant that when the database fell to enemy hands, there was little to prevent access. Reliance on biometrics to general path to risk to allies and local partners in future counterinsurgency wars. This A-links argument allows terrorists to track out opposition and strengthen their power. B links demonstrates alliances the U.S. is perceived as irresponsible. C outweighs the time frame. Damage is irreversible because biometrics cannot be changed. Third turn against the drone checks or metrics of recruitment. Point 18. Terror is propagated by the drone program. Drones create support for the very organization seeking back. Drone strikes can produce a public backlash against the U.S. government. This New York's their argument. Even if one leader is killed, they can quickly be replaced due to massive recruitment. B8 are always on probability. All their evidence agrees that despite 20 years of the war on terror, these groups are stronger than ever. But fourth turn against attacking government legitimacy. Boyle 13. The perception that a government is powerless to stop drone attacks on its territory or crippling to the incumbent regime and embolden its domestic rivals to challenge it through violence. This A-links to the argument state collapse give terrorist group more to operate, but beat out with severity state collapse is irreversible. We can combat terror through other means. Cut the next response. Fifth, empirics proves. Throng Governor 70 right. The number of terror attacks was an astonishing 1,000% of the countries that the U.S. conducted drone strikes in. Prefer this because their firm evidence says countries that obtain armed drones should protect their own territory to see casualty reduction, but isn't specific to the U.S. Ours is specific to the U.S. imperialistic invasion strikes. But 6, delinking recognition fails because of database inaccuracy. Bernstein 13. People are commonly listed in terrorist watch lists based on suspicions ranging from constantly impossible to observe. Agencies increasingly exempted from provisions requiring their aggregates to be accurate. Agencies benefit from listing more people at the expense of accuracy. Cut the card there. Go to the House of Cards argument. 1. Republicans turn it against them. Republicans hate BRT Afro-minis. COP 20. Republicans are raising concerns about the IRS expansion of collaboration with IDP that would require taxpayers to submit personal information, including sensitive biometric data. But second, dealing it. Majority of both parties support immigration. Jones 17. Very few Americans need Republicans say their preferred policy solution is deportation. Only 16% of Americans, only 28% of Republicans say their preferred policy option is to identify to deport those who are living in the country without legal documentation. Third, delink it. Immigration isn't the first voter. Edwards 22. With Republicans overwhelmingly focused on the economy, immigration isn't at the forefront of many voters' minds this year. Just 9% of Republican voters and 4% of Democratic voters called it their top issue. Prefer this because Porter evidence is just an assertion. Ours looks at actual polling. Fourth, turning against it, winners to win because of rallying public support. Share 14. After we see Akiva thought China climate deal and undocumented immigration reform, Obama was awarded with high approval rating in months. When Obama is seen blowing through roadblocks, the frustrated and dissipates bipartisanship was not sold as an end in of itself, but as means to make the government work. When Obama gets things done, it doesn't view Republicans to complain because he's getting not bipartisan. It puts pressure on Republicans, but turned against it. Biden's losing support among black voters. Absolves. Elliott 23. It's no exaggeration to credit its nomination to a unified black electorate in South Carolina's primacy. The through line continues to be that November with Biden's win over Trump. Biden needs to do more to shore up his position with black voters. Biden's standing among black voters on the ground. We're like Clinton's in 2016. You can't win the nomination to White House as a Democrat without the black vote. We do that through mass incarceration.
Okay, I'm gonna give thank yous first real quick. So yeah. I'd like to echo a lot of the thank yous that Alex gave in their speech. The University of Kentucky for hosting an excellent tournament, the TAB staff for all the work that they do, and our Durham Academy administration who always support our speech and debate team. I'd also like to echo the thank you that Alex gave to our coaching staff, Crawford, Anna, Elliot, Emma, Jacob, and Jordan. I mean, I think I've had some of like the best moments of my career because of them, and we definitely wouldn't be here without them. I'd also like to thank my parents for letting me skip school. And then I'd like to thank Alex for being not only my debate partner, but my best friend through this activity. The order is going to be frontlining, then their case.
When you say frontlining, Richard.
I mean, just responding to their rebuttal straight through our case.
Okay.
Are you starting with?
Yep, top down.
Sorry, just to be clear, it's Pandemics, Terror, House of Cards. all
Exactly.
frontlining.
Yep, and then their case number. On pandemics, first they read a turnabout distrust, but there are all causes to this. The NSA always does metadata collection, and we'd say that this is much more perceptual rather than what the US is actually doing. Second, they read an incarceration turn, but you can turn this turn. First, their uniqueness is wrong. Brookings 21 finds that in 2019, the nation's incarceration rate was the lowest since 1995. That's because Face ID is less biased than the human alternative. Van Bauer 21 finds that police departments will decide which public spaces to monitor. These will be made regardless of the form of surveillance. Furthering that facial recognition outperforms eyewitnesses by a large margin for racial differences in error rates. Cut the next card. Then third, they read a turn about deportations, but number one, deportations are plummeting. Zuccarelli on Tuesday writes that Biden's 2024 budget reveals ICE targets are continuing to plummet, a 76% decrease from 2017 to 2021. But second, new guidelines mean deportations only target suspected terrorists. Constituted 21 finds that immigration officers can no longer deport people because they're undocumented. New guidelines focus on the deportation of suspects of terrorism or espionage. Then we'll concede that contact tracing fails. On the overload turn, we'd say that there's dozens of all causes, like NSA collection, that also mean that overload will happen. Their evidence just says that means that contact tracing will fail, not that pandemics will get worse. On C2. First, they say that terror is increasing, but that's because the Taliban took over Afghanistan. It's not comparative. Second, they read a turn about data breaches, but biometrics are almost never the only authentication factor, so they don't increase data breaches. IDRD 21 finds that regulated industries and high assurance applications put multiple security checks in place to protect personal information and transactions, requiring the use of 2 or 3 factors like a PIN or an object in addition to biometric technology, including that the risk of fraud is extremely low. Third, they say that drones bad, but you can turn this turn. Drone strikes are better than the alternative. Sherman 11 finds that drones save American troops from the risk of death and kill far fewer civilians than ground troops. Biden 13 finds that using drones is far less bloody than asking allies to hunt down terrorists on the U.S.'s behalf who run into regularly torture and execute detainees, indiscriminately bomb civilian areas, or use scorched earth tactics. But then they say that that there's like overload. We would say that there's inaccuracies. Our argument is that drones are, or our argument is that they're 98.85% accurate. Then they say that there's overload. Again, I frontline that above. On politics. First, they say the Republicans hate biometric technology. Our argument is that Democrats need a hardline policy on it, which is why they are pushing for it. It's critical to shore up Biden's support with moderate Democrats. Second, they say that they support immigration. Our argument is that things have changed. Our evidence isolates that the moderate Democrats who Biden needs to win are not supportive of immigration. Then they say that it's not a voting issue. Their evidence is about Republicans. Then they say winners win. Their evidence is about Obama. It doesn't apply. Then they say that Biden's losing support among black voters now, but this evidence is too old. They've conceded our more recent uniqueness evidence, but because he's shoring up support for the Robinson evidence, he's going to win. That's from 3 days ago. Go to their case. Overview. Circumvention. Stallman 13 explains that limits on access to data won't fix the problem. U.S. agencies lie to cover up breaking the rules. Legal protections are precarious. They can be suspended or ignored when demagogues cite the usual excuses as grounds for total surveillance. A. Empirically, Moss 22 finds that in 2019, San Francisco banned government use of facial recognition. SFPD and NCRC staff still use facial recognition. They run around the ban. B. Even without biometrics, the government would have equally strong surveillance. Schneider 25 that focusing on one particular identification method misconstrues the nature of surveillance. We can always be identified. Our smartphones broadcast unique addresses, movement data, purchasing data, internet browsing data. A ban on facial recognition won't make any difference. Two implications. First, it's terminal defense on their case. Surveillance and abuse of data occurs in either world. Second, it turns case. 2 warrants. First is legal barriers. In a neg world, there are more legal barriers and protections attached to biometrics in courts, such as the Fourth Amendment, but under the table use is unregulated and secretive, working through unofficial means in court. Second is public reform. When the harms of biometrics are apparent in the neg world, people push for reforms, but under the table use on the app is invisible and can't spur reform empirically. Reforms work. Van Bauer 21 finds that some fear facial recognition for unlimited purposes will be used, but Fourth Amendment cases foreclose that scenario. Baltimore already had a police program dismantled on Fourth Amendment grounds, including the persistent monitoring using facial recognition will be struck down for the same reason. reasons. Then on C1, first, there are dozens of all causes to their link: NSA metadata surveillance, the perception of government intervention, etc. We would say that those are this argument is about perception, which we argue would not be changed because people would still think that the government is using the data. On C2, first, the resolution is about biometric recognition technology. We would argue that they are still able to use deepfakes if they aren't used with the express purpose of recognition, because that's all the resolution bans, i.e. they don't need to know the identity of a person in order to make a deepfake of them, just what their face looks like. Then on the impact, Quinlan 09 finds that there have been many known accidents involving nuclear weapons, none until detonation. On C3, we would say we link turn it per our case because drone strikes are far more accurate with biometric data, which is definitely a good thing.
Okay. You good for Tom?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can have the first question.
Sounds good. So you say when you're frontlining your politics argument, firstly that you're talking about moderate Democrats being like unsure of whether to vote for Biden based on immigration, and then when you were frontlining that immigration is a big important issue for voters, you said it isn't about Republicans. So which group are you actually like impacting to like Biden winning the round?
Yeah, my front line is that your evidence is about Republicans. It says that Republicans do not really care about immigration as a voting issue. Our argument is not about Republicans. Can I
Okay,
have a question?
so you agree it's not about Republicans. Our evidence actually is specific to Democrats. It says 4% of them care about immigration as their top issue.
I would say that number one, the other response that things have changed also applies insofar as our uniqueness is more recent. Yeah, our argument is that there is.
Democrats have started caring about immigration,
I mean,
a massively higher
it comes from the Baker evidence, the Robinson evidence, and the Samuels
Can you
evidence.
read me a specific
It's about.
quote from those cards that say that like Democrats, like a majority of Democrats care about
Yeah, I mean,
immigration?
I can pull our case up, but like the broader point is that our argument is that it has become like very important for the moderate wing of the Democratic Party. Can I have
Yeah.
a question? Okay. So let's talk about deepfakes. So if you were going to make a deepfake of someone, would you need to, let's say, like know who they are?
Yes.
Wait, but if you didn't know the identity of a person and you had their face, couldn't you still make a deepfake of them?
Well, maybe in some cases you could, but our Nash evidence is specific to military uses of deepfakes, and says the way the military is reliant on creating these is identifying specific individuals to create deepfakes of in order to cause maximum destabilization during the conflict.
Wait, your Nash evidence is about biometrics broader. The point I'm making
No, it's about
is that.
deepfakes specifically.
No, it is. It's about how biometrics broadly affect deepfakes. The point I'm making is that even though biometrics affect deepfakes, biometric recognition technology, which is specifically for recognizing people, does not apply in that context because you do not need to know who someone is to create a
Well, my
deepfake.
argument is that's an analytic, and our Nash evidence is specific to military.
But your Nash
But I'm
evidence
gonna
does
take a
not
question
respond to the
Could you read me-
non-topical argument.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a question. Could you read me a specific quote from any of the cards in your third contention that say a majority of Democratic voters view immigration as their top issue?
Let me pull the doc up.
Okay. I mean, it's fine if you can't. I don't think.
I mean,
you
I
need
just
to
don't have
because
the
I
doc
looked at
pulled
your
up.
evidence, but-
Yeah, the Samuels evidence says, quote, immigration is tightly intertwined with, or Biden's support among moderate Democrats. Can I have a question?
Yeah, but that's not an empirical study. It's like, that's what I said in rebuttal. Porter just says this is the case. How do they know?
That's not Porter.
No methodology.
That's Samuels. Can I have a
Okay.
question?
Same logic applies.
Wait, but the Samuels evidence is empirical. It's from 538, which uses numerical data to calculate their expectations for elections. That's fine.
Okay, sure.
It's just gonna start with overview. And then I'll find it from there. What? Okay. Sorry, my wasn't wrong. Is anybody?
You're starting on the con.
Oh, sorry, their overview. Yeah, their overview of the circumvention stuff, and then I'll signpost from there. Sorry, my bad.
Sorry.
Anybody? No. Oh,
Yeah.
no, you're good.
Starts on circumcision stuff. Okay, so Afghanistan, then deepfakes.
So it'll just be on our case, quick, addressing their overview, and then I'm basically just gonna go right to Afghanistan, and then I'll go to their case. So starting probably first on pandemics really quickly, and then I'll signpost.
Signpost
Yeah,
after
just
that.
signpost.
Yeah, after that.
No worries, no worries. All right. Is anybody nodding? Great. On the over prefer installments from a random blogs where no qualifications or warning bans work, look to drugs, anti-corruption, etc. But second, fiat means we get access to our office. We cannot have a debate if the app does not have it. Surveillance continues in either world. No one gets access to any of their office. But third, even then, presume for us that there's no office at the end of the day. But they say there are more legal barriers. Turn for federalism. Current password of data privacy regulation, DEX animation, cash with 22 fines. In the absence of comprehensive federal law, a handful of large states enact data privacy legislation over a 10-year period. These costs would exceed $1 trillion. That means that legal barriers are worse in their world. But they even then go to this argument about public reforms. This is completely not unique. If the U.S. still does it under the table, then the same argument can happen. You can still do public reforms. It's like, look to empirics. But then on to 1 and 2, there's literally no offense. There's no letter to use. Sign your ballots on Afghanistan. It is very, very simple. U.S. is massively increasing drone strike in the south point of Afghanistan, which are enabled by BRT because we have requirements that require us to target our identification. This causes manufacturing in Afghanistan between the coalitions there because they're more radicalized, which is they fight against. So they're creating a massive civil war. The weighing is also very, very simple on politics. Link it, link it to bioterror. Fracturing creates more resentment and more powerful groups are more likely to do bioterror attacks, but also probability. Throwing Gopner is conceded, it wins thus the round. Go over onto their case about terrorism. Remember that they conceded there's a massive 1,900% increase in terror attacks when you have drone strikes. And also remember that their evidence is not even talking about U.S. drones. That proves to that drones only radicalize and increase anti-American sentiment. But then also always on time frame because our impacts will trigger immediately. You have no idea when they stop their attacks from happening. But then on House of Cards, first aid Lincoln. Regional war destroys investment in renewable energy since money is being diverted to conflicts. It's destroying a global economic hub that accesses their impact. The second is a cross-app. You can also cross the time frame way. Go to their case. On pandemics, they can see the impact emails. Let them go for it. On to terror, they massive mishandle it here as well. Extend the second term about data breaches. By BRT actually to massive databases of information which allows terrorists to actually get access to them because they have very low protection because they're used in the field. They misunderstand the argument. They say they don't only have one authentication factor. We're not talking about BRT being used as authentication factor. We're talking about the BRT database. And something weighing in is clean considered that wins us around. First aid Lincoln. Terrorists are able to track down their opposition and then actually use it to create more violent attacks, which means that second you can also always severity because if you know who you're really trying to target through BRT, the attacks are much, much worse. But then you can also, they're trying to extend that in the alternative world it's much worse because we don't have drone strikes. However, this is literally false. We are pulling out of the region right now. It is politically unpopular. We're focusing on China. There is no world in which we do boots in the ground. The Western source they've conceded this legally. It's literally illegal for us to not do drone strikes. So without BRT, you don't have any options there. Oh, but they can also link it again because terror spikes it to increase support for Trump and Democratic defection because Biden's Afghanistan withdrawal is seen as a failure. But then remember, on politics, you can extend first that winners do win. For example, Obama, who's somebody who passed bills together because they're talking about Democrats, you literally rally up the base together. This is what talking about Obama. Obama is obviously relevant. But even then, remember that they're extending third response. This is not the first voter. People look to economic. People look to more like pressing issues. They say that there are things have changed. Or if it's posted there, it's clearly haven't. Very clean, but in Afghanistan.
It'll start on circumvention overview. Down our case, got it. I guess just Afghanistan.
Don't make me hear that.
So circumvention, and then our terror, and then politics, and then Afghanistan.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay.
What's after your terror?
Politics.
Politics.
Okay. Extend the circumvention term. They have conceded the installment evidence that these government agencies do not listen to these widespread bans and will find under-the-table ways to circumvent them and go after the types of things that they want to. They have a few responses. First, they say that it's just random blogs. No, it lists concrete examples of times when this has happened. For example, more general responses like the NSA skirting surveillance bans and bans that are specific to biometrics, such as in San Francisco and San Diego, where biometric data collection was banned. Their police department still did it. Next, they say fiat means that this can't happen. No, they fiat that the resolution is implemented and that the U.S. bans biometric data collection, but our argument is a probability analysis of what happens after this ban. But next, they say that it costs trillions of dollars, and this is a term. There's no impact on this. I don't understand what this means. But second, they extend the legal barriers argument that in their world, the data collection that is happening is way, way worse because in our world in which it is legal, you see things like the Fourth Amendment empirically in places like Baltimore or in the courts push through reforms, whereas where it happens under the table, no one sees that it's happening and no one no reforms happen. This means that it's terminal defense on their case because it means that all of the data collection that they're talking about is still going to happen, especially for something like drones. The government cares so much about national security, but second, it's a link turn because it means that there's no reform in their world. Then, let's go to our argument about terror. The round ends with they functionally concede 2 turns on terror. 1, they've conceded that drone strikes are better than the alternative. They say we won't go boots on the ground, but that's not the argument. They've conceded the violent evidence that the alternative, if we were backing out of the region, is asking allies to hunt down terrorists who are known to regularly torture and execute detainees, indiscriminately bomb civilian areas, or use scorched earth tactics leading to far more terrorists than the drone strikes. Their response with the thrall evidence is not responses. Even if drones increase terror, our argument is that it will increase more without because it would just be boots on the ground from our allies, and second, that they'll be less accurate, so there's more collateral damage. Second, they concede that drone strikes will happen with or without biometric, which was our only response on drone strikes. They will always continue, but biometrics make them more accurate, creating less anti-American sentiment. Horowitz 20 writes, drone strikes are popular with the American public due to the fear of casualties with support crossing party lines. Sonnenberg 20 confirms employing biometrics for the purpose of kinetic party lines. Sonnenberg 20 targeting including voice recognition and use in drone strikes. Jeffrey 23 writes the technology risks with 98.85% accuracy. Thompson 23 confirms facial recognition technology provides benefits and inferior innocent people are killed. Go to politics. Extended with public perceptions of immigration. Biden's biggest weakness. He has protected his support with the use of biometrics at the border. And Bigger concludes Biden is now ahead of Republican adversaries, and while biometrics play almost no role in actually carrying out deportation, the perception of them is key. If polls slip, Caltego finds an unsettled anticipated field of contenders would lose to Trump, and Starr finds that it would cause extinction by 2050 because it would disavow any climate policy. 1, they don't read an impact on the argument they go for. Check the dog, which means that any risk of offense on our argument wins us the round. But second, their defense is pretty bad. The first is that it destroys renewable energy. The vast majority of renewable energy are not in war-torn terrorist countries war-torn by terrorism. But second, and they say that Democrats they don't care. They concede that their evidence from 2017. Our Samuel's evidence is from literally months ago, and it says that Biden's biggest vulnerability is this. And they say winners win again. I have no idea what this means. Also, I would say probably they've conceded that if Trump wins, there'll be runaway climate change because he reverses climate policy. That's the star evidence, so it's try or die, any risk of offense, and also they don't have an impact, so that wins the round for us.
The table tilt. Thanks. All right, are you ready for cross?
Yeah.
You can have the first question.
Okay, sounds good. You have one more. Okay, sounds good. So, let's talk about politics.
Yep.
So, given all the people who Biden is trying to influence are Democrats, correct?
Yes.
Presumably they voted for Biden in the last election.
I mean,
We don't know. Maybe.
we don't know.
If you're a Democrat, you probably voted for Biden.
In the general election against Trump? Yes.
General election.
Yeah.
At that point, when they see the politician they elected doing something, passing legislation, being active, being a politician essentially, why would that be something they don't like?
Yeah, a few things. Number one, you've conceded the hyper-specific evidence that's about a hardline stance on immigration. But number
Which
two,
we don't.
your evidence is about Trump. Can I have a question? Or not about Trump, about Obama, not about Biden. Can I have a question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, let's talk about during Prohibition, when they banned drinking alcohol, did people continue to drink alcohol?
Okay, this is incredibly different because the enforcement mechanism and the thing itself is very, very different.
Well, this is more about
wait,
the
how?
fiat argument. This is a response. What I'm trying to get at is fiat does not mean that everyone follows the ban, just that a ban is implemented.
Oh, if we want to talk about fiat, look, for debate to work, something has to pass. Sure, maybe in the real world there could be a different way for someone to circumvent, but the reality is for us to even have a debate space or even have a debate in general, you have to have one world with one thing, one world without another thing.
Wait,
There's no world in which...
Wait, isn't PF a policy-making event? We're trying to see if this policy would be good or not.
No,
Isn't this...
Also,
Yes,
well,
yes. Isn't this determined by...
There is a change, obviously. For example, our argument about politics is based on perception. So government agencies can continue to circumvent the ban, and Biden can still lose popularity because of the perception of voting.
No, okay, then literally every single argument becomes a quote-unquote perception argument, and that is not an actual debate. Essentially...
I would say that
No, guys, this is very, very simple. For a debate to function, an act actually has to go through. This has always been the case, right? I don't know why.
Our
then I
argument
can go through.
is that the AF is passed, but that the AF is circumvented, which is a functionally conceded argument.
No, it's
And
not
our-
functionally conceded because we respond with not only with a term that you just say I don't know what it means, but then also
Well,
with...
the response was no
Wait.
impact to the term, but I understand. Y'all can have a question.
Okay, sounds good. Let's talk about, okay, let's talk about terror. So you tell me that the alternative is supposedly asking our allies. If that is true, why is it that when we use drone strikes, attacks go up almost 2,000%?
Yeah, the backline to this is that your thrall evidence is not responsive because if drones increase terror, our argument is that terror will increase more with the
So
alternative
at
that's worse
best,
than
you
drones.
have a mitigatory response. That's
No,
what
no,
I'm
no, it's a term.
It's a term.
No.
Because
Because
wait,
your
your
evidence
evidence isn't
says
comparative. Our evidence
drone
is
strikes
comparative.
are bad. Our argument is, sure, drone strikes are bad, but the alternative
that
is
is
worse
still basically
per the
like-
conceded by minimum.
Yeah,
No, it's
wait,
illegal.
no, if
even
you're-
if you buy your argument at its highest ground, you have literally no idea what this increase is, but obviously we'll extend our response that we read to this thing.
Wait, it's a trade-off.
No,
Which
it's
one
not a
is-
trade
Wait,
off.
our
Yeah,
argument
That's
is
not.
that is the alternative to drone strikes.
Okay, it's gonna be extending our argument about Afghanistan, doing weighing. Yeah, Afghanistan, answering their responses, their case. Anyone else?
Yeah, sorry, I need
Where do you
that.
want me to put the Afghanistan debate? Is that on your pace or are you doing it on your
Yeah.
pace?
So Afghanistan,
Their case. Like, I'll just like, the overview and like the terror terms all address in my case and then my case.
yeah, sorry, their case, could you just say, like deportation, or like,
Like the contention name.
Oh, yeah, the politics. Got you. Okay.
yeah, whatever you want.
Extend our argument about Afghanistan. Drone strikes are spiking right now. Biometrics prove the vast majority of identification in Afghanistan per who and both. Banning BRT solves. We can actually do drone strikes if we don't know who or where the terrorists are. The impact of state collapse, drones fracture, terror groups empowering extreme factions, leading to increased radicalization, leading to fighting of territory that causes regional war. The first response they extended is overview. One, we indicted their Stallman evidence and said it has no empirical examples, warrants, or methodology. You prefer the other the ban actually gets implemented. Their own example about San Francisco proves it. It tells you that because only the police were banned from collecting biometric data, they could get it from other actors, but there's a complete ban that solves. They say no fiat means the ban is implemented. This is literally our argument. Yes, the ban is implemented, therefore they don't have access to any of their arguments. Then they try to extend this argument about legalism, but one, recognize that if there's no regulation, you can't actually see if someone's like collecting biometric data. It's much harder to check back on them. But secondly, Sophia answered this. If something is illegal, it's way easier to sue them in court for doing it. By their own argument, we are much better solvency. Then go to their terror terms. They say it's better than the alternative. One, none of this biomet evidence is specific. It's from 2013, and none of it is talking about Afghanistan. Prefer us on specificity. But secondly, they consider the widespread evidence that all of our that the only way we can get intelligence on where terrorists are is specifically from biometrics. Therefore, the allies wouldn't be effective in trigger a link even if they went in. Then they say it happens absent biometric recognition and causes it increases accuracy, which reduces civilian casualties. One, this is literally not our link. It's fracturing. They can win this argument, but they haven't implicated a true impact, so they have no offense here. But secondly, they've considered the thrall evidence, which posted theirs and tells you that drone strikes leading to a 1,900% in terror attacks. Clearly, this argument is true, and they're not actually accurate. Extend the weighing. One, we looked at the argument regional war destroys investment in renewable energy since money is being diverted to conflict. They say we only attack one country, but they've considered the Middle East is a globally economic hub because of oil exports and like the trade of Hormuz being a key trade route. So we definitely need energy globally. But secondly, we link at terrorist likely to increase support for Trump and democratic defections because it's further proof that Biden's Afghanistan withdrawal was a failure and Dax's support. They say our evidence is old. No, this happened recently. But thirdly, time frame weighing bakes a tie. ICG impact is conceded. State collapse is admitted. Comparatively, climate change takes forever to materialize, so intervening actors can solve. On their case, extend winners win. They just say they have no idea. That's not a response. Specifically, when Democrats are perceived as being effective, that makes voters more likely to turn out for them because they think they're actually doing things and passing their priorities. Prefer us. The evidence is super mishandled.
Okay, we have 5 seconds.
We have 8 seconds of prep. All right, time will start. Okay, the order is going to be the terror argument.
Who's?
I'd say theirs.
Okay, theirs.
Right. It's where I floated most of the stuff. So.
Yeah, I have.
Wait, on Afghanistan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The order is going to be that, and then it's going to be weighing, then it's going to be our argument about a house of cards. Is everyone ready? Oh, I'll do it.
Afghanistan weighing deportations.
Afghanistan weighing deportations.
House of cards.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Is everyone ready? Excellent. We are not going for the circumvention argument, but by far the easiest place to vote is on the drop turn on terror. They've conceded that drone strikes are better than the alternative. They say that we won't go boots on the ground, but that's not the argument. They have conceded the Biomet evidence that the alternative, even if we are backing out of the region, is asking allies to hunt down terrorists who are known to regularly torture and execute detainees, indiscriminately bomb civilian areas, or use scorched earth tactics, leading to far more terrorism than drone strikes. Their response at the end of this round, number one, they make a new indict of Biden. They say it's from 2013. But again, even then, they have not read any newer evidence about what the alternative is. They have conceded that the alternative is scorched earth tactics, which increase terrorism far more. Second, they say that Thrall says that drone strikes increase terror attacks a lot. Our argument is, sure, drone strikes increase terrorism, but the alternative, which is our evidence that scorched earth tactics by our allies increase terror far more. It's just a conceded link turn on their case that was not properly handled. Moreover, you can vote for us very cleanly on our argument because of the weighing. They have conceded the try or die weighing. That extinction is happening right now per our conceded evidence that runaway climate change is happening right now. The only risk of offense in this round at all, because we know extinction is going to happen, is getting a Democratic president in. At that point, extend the argument. With public perceptions of immigration being Biden's biggest weakness, he has protected his support with the use of biometrics at the border, and Baker concludes that Biden is now ahead of the Republican adversaries and Democratic challengers. And while biometrics play almost no role in actually carrying out deportations, the perception of them is key. If polls slip, Caldego finds that an unsettled and untested field of contenders would lose to Trump, and Starr finds that would cause extinction by 2050 because he would disavow any climate policy. At the end of this round, they get to our case at 2 minutes. Do not vote on any of the defense that was extended. I was holding up the timer. They got to our case at 2 minutes, but moreover, they just said extend the winner's win turn. It didn't actually extend it. They have conceded that their evidence is only about Obama. At that point, our argument about politics is just functionally conceded. They have conceded that hardline policies on immigration are critical to Biden's support, but that by banning biometrics, he looks weak on the issue, which then removes his support from the moderate Democrats that are critical to him winning re-election. It's basically conceded. The try or die framing is conceded, and the link turn on their case is just not properly handled. It is game over for the neg.
First of all, thank you everybody for being a really great audience. Durham and Blake, this was a very, very good round, and both of you have a lot to be proud of, as well as everybody here for a really wonderful tournament. It's very special to be back in person with all of you, so thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Allie to announce the decision of the final round of Public Forum Gold at the 2023 Tournament of Champions.
Shirley said congratulations, so it is a 4-1 decision for the negative majority.
Yeah, cool. I'll go first. I'll end this round on the terrorist scenario. First look at the terrorist scenario. Then we're getting a great response to and the final focus on how on this card that talks about how BRT will solve the drone scenarios. So I think the alpha swing over there. I look at the politics this side. I think the alpha swing the winner's win scenario. So I just set the terrorist scenario outways.
You would have started that into this.
Okay.
Either way. Yeah, you can start. Let's
Okay. First I want to say it's just an amazing job. Everyone did really well, the ATOC finals. I ultimately think that Durham HH is ahead because of Biden. It seems that regional wars, torture bombing would increase if we don't use drones, while Thrall is specific about an increase in terror when we use drones. That really seems to be irresolvable. I think that there is a higher risk that the world without drones are worse than a world with. To get there, I evaluate two things. The first is the Biden turn versus Thrall. It seems that this is really a yes-no question. If this conceded turn is true, then frankly, I'm not sure if there is any other offense. I think the evidence says that if we don't have drones, then we rely on other ways to find and get terrorists, like using people, torturing people. I think the answer that Blake extends is Thrall, that drones cause an increase in terrorism. It's difficult to resolve these two pieces of evidence because I think they're both probably true and not assuming the other. Neither side does any work to compare them in this debate or explain how we should resolve that. I think what that means is both are true. Terrorism increases when we use drones, but if we don't use drones, then we rely on other mechanisms like torture. Perhaps the torture is more effective, but unclear. Durham does say scorched earth is bad. I think this means that at the end of the Afghanistan's contention, Blake is probably winning a decrease in terrorism, but also probably a risk that like extended instances of bombing, et cetera, happen via Biden. So then the second thing I need to look at is the politics contention. Blake's final focus tells me if there's an increase in terrorism, Trump will win. This seems like a very new argument, final focus, or I'm old and missed it, so that could be my fault. The only argument that Blake extends is winners win. Durham tells me that's irrelevant because it refers to Obama. I think that might be true. I understand the concept of winners win is a theory outside of Obama, and probably understand that the evidence is using Obama as an example, but that doesn't get said in the debate, which means that I at least have an answer to the winners win scenario that it may not apply because it's not talking about Trump and Biden, which means if we ban I think that means there's probably a risk that Trump wins the election, which means if we ban biometrics, that could cause runaway voting. But that means, I think for a round winning affirmative final focus would be a better extension of winners win and a better way to resolve the Biden thrall. I don't think that I went back and forth, to be very honest, and I don't think that it was like obvious or anything like that. I think if the final focus compared the two pieces of evidence and resolved that debate, at least for me, I think it would have been a more difficult decision.
I can go next. My decision is very similar. I conclude that a ban on biometric technology would end U.S. drone strikes in Afghanistan, but that be replaced by indiscriminate campaigns by allies that are net more destabilizing. I also conclude it's a minor risk of the elections debate if it's a tiebreaker if I'm unsure about the ability to resolve terrorism. I actually first start with resolving what does fiat mean. I was very surprised Neg did not go for circumvention, but I do conclude the AF is correct, that if we were to ban biometrics, we'd be unable to authorize any U.S. drone strikes, because I think your internal evidence is quite good. So I then am only resolving the question about its efficacy on the ground. For the drones debate, I think that both sides agree there's backlash to drone strikes. The question is solely the degree of it or other actors filling in. Two things make this frustrating to resolve. One is both sides are reading cards that are single lines that are not quite as comparative as you all are wanting it to be. The second thing is I don't think the neg actually does answer some of the nitty-gritty about sort of the Taliban factionalization arguments, which is how you explain in later speeches. But even with that, there's a couple of problems for me. One is, I conclude that this Biden term does that way. This evidence is frustrating short, but it is actually very explicit that the alternative to U.S. strikes would be other actors conduct bombing campaigns and torture. If the reason why the Taliban is able to consolidate under factionalization is indiscriminate strikes, that seems inevitable even if we end U.S. strikes, and then there's only a risk that some of the other alternatives would also be worse. I actually think that this is a place where the AF could have overcome this very easily earlier on, with an argument that says if the United States stops attacks, other allies will too, that perhaps because we are all part of an anti-ISIS campaign, the United States is leading, or sort of a pro-Saudi Arabia campaign that supports coalitions, that we would sort of strong-arm them into being in line with our policy. I think that analytic would have overcome for me, but absent that, I don't think any of your evidence actually speaks to the efficacy of what allies will do in response. I think this becomes an issue for me about whether you actually have link terms on the elections page. Because I think a lot of the answers on elections are intuitive and smart, but they all rely upon you winning that you resolve violence in the Middle East, e.g. the renewables arguments, which means I don't think you get to it. I do consider the thrall evidence as well. I don't think this evidence is solely, or even if this evidence is solely about U.S. drone strikes, it seems the argument just says that like when drone strikes happen, it results in terrorist backlash. I don't know why that would not also apply to ally policy. Elections debate, I spent some time working through this, even though the offense above is enough to go negative. One, I think that large parts of the internal story are conceded. I always said the AF didn't extend the incredibly logical argument that there are far more pressing problems than immigration and biometrics that are coming up. Quite frankly, that a lot of this evidence is like terrible, and you can just convince me that this is a dirty lie when there's a whole year left in the election. But I think there's at least some risk of a link. The second is, I also agree that the terrorism link term about Biden looking weak is very intuitive and very smart and makes sense. But again, the problem for me is I think you only win this argument if you win that we do in fact successfully decrease terrorism, which would make it offense. 3 is winners win. I also agree that this is a persuasive link turn, and I don't think it being about Obama is enough for me to just like ignore it. The larger problem for me is I don't think you get to the warrant in time in terms of sort of when I stop flowing. And so I think that even though the NIC has poorly answered this, I don't think it's enough offense for me to sort of just disregard the election phase proper, or for me to evaluate that link turning elections outweighs sort of the other terrorism debate.
All right, very similar feedback. I want to start with circumvention though. I have a different perspective. I did policy debate for 9 years, so like, you know, I think like what your overview is doing is more of a K. Like you're trying to make a K. It's like for me, it's not like fiat. I think they're right about fiat, right? Like it has to be like we are passing the policy and like they get access to solvency, or we're not going to be able to have a debate because like you need like yeah, like you're talking more about like I don't know, this is more of a K argument. Like I would never vote on this argument. But anyway, on my RFD, so very similar, different wording. Starting with drones, I think the pro misses some of their key offense in Final Focus. I think we had some pieces of our pro, but the con has the scorched earth argument, which at least casts some doubt on this contention. I think the turn extensions here didn't really get enough comparative mechanizing. On the con case on House of Cards, pro doesn't get to it in time, and even if I grant you the winners win argument and say that you did get to it in time, I'm not sure what this evidence gets you if I just read the card without a contextual articulation or any mechanization. Con outweighs on magnitude there for the Biden-Lincoln. I think we need the Hyde argument to mechanize this better. Like you have some stuff in your case to deal with the whole like that ends up us like, you know, our allies get terrorized, this is bad for alliances. I don't know, I feel like there's more meat and stuff that we could have extended and give your turn a little bit more oomph, but I think con just gets away with a cleaner extension. It's a lot shorter and sweet, but yeah.
I hate to be the judge that's like, oh, I had a different thing, you know, I'm so different. Yeah, I honestly just thought it was the climate change being dropped means extinction's inevitable, so I have to vote for the negative, which means if the turn, even if it's not a turn, then it's still defense against your shit, and you don't have defense against their stuff. You know what I mean? So it's just like, you know, I don't want to live in a world where we all have to die, but it's like if you know you can't fully solve your thing, then it's like some probability defense. You know. Other random thoughts, you know, I get that this is PF and not like critical, but like both sides are defending drone strikes and military interventions, and I wish one team was just like, doesn't have to be like this, but side thoughts. I get your opinion totally, but I thought circumvention could have been a 20-second TKO. I just thought I just thought the con is correct because it's just like, if it's a consequence of the plan passing, then it is not a usual fiat K, because a usual fiat K is plan won't pass, which is usual circumvention arguments. Durable fiat obviously solves, you know, we should, not could. But if the negs argument is ban passes, US policymakers still do things post-ban, then I don't know why that it would, like, that's a disadd to the plan, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like, it's not a fiat K, you know what I mean? And yeah, I honestly, the other thing I just disagree is just like, I don't know if it's a politics disadd and uniqueness is from 2014 about a different president, that's enough for me to immediately throw it out, because it's just like, even if you're right that winners win, I don't think your card says like all winners will always win. And it just loses when the neg is just like, here's a specific scenario that matters right now. I don't think winners win could ever take out like, because like that would just mean like 50 years down the line, if the neg has read specific evidence that like this thing is key, I don't see why like winners win would just always trump that, because yeah. And like any counter historical example where a winner did not win would disprove that. But anyway, yeah, basically the same decision otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah.